being 6:30, I'm calling this meeting of the Whitman-Hanson Regional School Committee to order. Would everybody please join me and stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I think Glenn got it.
Oh, good. Oh,
Glenn.
I think so. Oh, good. Okay, good evening, everyone. First, we start out with the public comment, and I have just Brian Hanson. Would you like to come up and speak, please?
Good evening, everybody. I'm sure you know who I am, but I'm Brian Hanson, 74 Rock Street. Anyone can't hear me? Okay. Brian Hanson, 74 Rock Street in Whitman. Former selectman in Whitman, 2004 to 2022. I just wanted to touch base with you on just a few points. Everybody in this room knows what the facts and figures are by now. And the selectmen, the finance committee, you folks, you've all done a hard job, a lot of work. But I just was going through some information today, as a matter of fact, because I didn't want to go outside and look at the sun. But Massachusetts is on some pretty nefarious lists as far as costs go. We're second in the country in the cost of living at almost $54,000 per year. We're first in salary by state at almost, excuse me, $77,000. And we're third in the country for home mortgages at $588,000. Fourth in rent at $1,806 a month. But I can tell you, you'd be hard pressed to find anything in Whitman-Hanson for $1,800 a month. We're eighth in annual food costs at almost $4,800 a year, which is about $92 a week. Healthcare costs is the big one, almost $13,000 a year for healthcare. Annual taxes, we're third in the country at $7,105. These are real impact numbers to everybody in Whitman and Hanson. Food costs are up 25% since last year. Gas, 40%. Credit card use is up 46% because everybody's using those cards because they can't make ends meet. Home sales are down 26%. And this is the kicker, real wages are down 2%. So all these costs are going up crazy, and the wages have gone down. I've seen on town sites that Hanson spends about 49% of their budget on all education. And Whitman is 49.7 on all education. That includes all schools. The mortgage rate has gone from 3% to 7% on average. I looked today and there's 12 homes just in Whitman that are up for sale. And they're all over $500,000. I guess my point is, Whitman just is struggling like most people in America right now. I don't know, what kind of deal you've got going on, and that's up to you guys, Board of Selectmen, and the citizens to vote on it. I just wanted to bring attention to what average everyday citizens are paying, and the struggle is real. The credit card number is outstanding because people are using their credit cards for balancing their monthly budget. Problem is we have so much money per month, and the money runs out and the month doesn't. So So we have to take into consideration very hard our decisions tonight, tomorrow night, town meeting, and a ballot box. And I just urge you to take a look at those numbers, because what's affecting these citizens or families in this town is very, very real. And there's a chance that we'll see a lot of people putting their house up for sale, or a lot of the old folks doing reverse mortgages, and that's not good. So I urge you to think about those numbers. I know it's a very tough job. I've been there, done that. These are unprecedented times, and we have to really be very thoughtful in how we go about these decisions. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, next we have approval of meeting minutes, March 13th, 2024.
Motion to approve? Second.
Okay, we have to do roll call because
Okay.
Glenn is on the phone. Okay, Fred?
Yes.
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 Don?
Yes.
Yes.
Steve? Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
That's a yes.
Okay, and yes from me. Okay, and one absent. Okay, the next is March 20th, 2024.
March 20th as presented. Second.
Okay, Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Chris? Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Okay, so we're going to switch up a little bit from the superintendent's evaluation to the budget discussion and the unpaid bills. We're going to do those after, so we're going to go right to the budget discussion. And that's me. So on April 1st, Jeff and I met with the two town administrators, Lisa and Mary Beth, and the two chairs of the select boards, Carl and Laura. It was a good meeting. It went about an hour and a half, almost. I do want to say they were not trying to micromanage us. They were not putting us down. They were understanding of what we were, what our concerns were too, not just what their concerns were. We felt it was very collaborative, okay? And we tried to come up with something that we thought would work, hopefully, but, it depends on what we decide. Before I go over what we talked about, I would like to remind the board, because some people have said that we are going backwards, that we haven't progressed, and that we haven't had any new programs. And I want to remind everybody that we certainly have. We have seen that in the last couple months with all the data, the students' progress alone. We've advanced. We've come forward. Okay, so I don't want anybody saying that we haven't come forward. We've also had everybody saying we haven't added new programs. Yes, we did. We had one was the innovation pathways for medical and health, and one for business. Very important new program for students to prepare them for the outside world. We have that kind of growth. We have added curriculum for grades 1 through 10 that wasn't there. That's a consistent curriculum for the teachers and the students. Those have been added, so I don't want the board to think that we haven't done anything. Yes, we have progressed, okay? What I'm going to suggest does not impact any student growth, okay? And it hopefully might be the best way of getting through this year. We have talked to them about more conversations forward through the town, and not just us, but with the town too, and things that they have decided that they need to do coming up. But we all know that one of the main problems here is the state. The state gave us a little over $100,000. And I just want to make sure that people in the audience and out there understand, we're not asking for an 11% increase here, okay? The 11% is the assessment, not the budget increase, okay?
okay? The assessment increased because the state did not give us the increase that they should have. It was a very low increase. $100,000 doesn't go very far, as you know. And everything, as Brian just said, everything has gone up. And that's for the school. And you have to remember that we are a municipality here at Whitman-Hanson Regional. We have our own health insurance, we have our own maintenance, we have our own the facilities, we have our own payroll, we have our own administration, separate from the two towns. So it's a little bit different than other places that you read about, like Hanover or Situate, and those places that are just, they're all one and in the town and belong in the town. We don't, okay? So what we talked about was how to do this, and we knew that both sides couldn't do much of anything without an override. The issue was, if we're going to do an override, what size, okay, to help? Last meeting, Jeff presented the different tiers. And the first tier that he presented was with around $900,000 given back. So almost $1 million, taking off what the request was. It called for the not filling, non-renewals, and retirements. These positions would not affect student scores, would not affect the young students' class sizes that everybody was so concerned about. Okay? It would be a loss of positions, but positions that Jeff felt that could be absorbed. We have talked about in this committee about, and so has the public, about the decrease in numbers. So that's one of the reasons that what Jeff has proposed would not impact student achievement at Whitman-Hanson. So the suggestion is that we vote for that first one, taking $250 out of E&D. $250,000, sorry. $250. $250,000, 100 out of Circuit Breaker, and then the non-renewals and the retirements. And that would bring down the amount. It would mean that the town of Whitman, I don't have the town of Hanson's numbers, but the override amount, instead of being well over $1 million for both towns, if we kept the assessment as it is, would be down to about 500-something thousand for Whitman, and we didn't hear from Hanson, but I'm assuming maybe 300,000, Jeff?
Something like that.
For Hanson, for an override vote. In looking at their towns, they felt that those would have a better chance of passing because it would be a smaller amount, rather than anything over $1 million is too much. The two town administrators and the chairman, both chairs of selectmen, thought that this was the best solution for this year. We know it's a Band-Aid. I know the towns are thinking about larger overrides or doing something else. We'll also look at different things that we can do, possibly. But right now, this was, everybody has to remember, a level service budget. This did not include anything else. We did also, a lot of people talking about, well, what do you need the interventionists for? Well, I think that everybody could see that the interventionists made a difference. All our scores went up, and they continue to go up. That would put us backwards if we couldn't have them anymore. They also talked about all the positions that we hired. 7 of those positions were required positions for the ELL students, the English language learners, that we had to put in either teachers or tutors. So it is necessary that we keep them. We also, what people need to understand is that during a school year, changes can happen. We might get in students that have special needs, and we have to service them and do whatever it costs. And if you think our costs have gone up, you can only imagine what out-of-placement costs are for students. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for one student. So I ask everybody to keep that in consideration when they're doing it. But I also would ask my committee to please think about reducing the assessment by that original figure, and it's 900, I didn't write down my amount. 900,
910,500?
yes.
That's what it was.
And reducing the assessment by $910. Okay, and I would hope that you would consider that. So if I have a motion, and then we can have discussion. If I have a motion in a second.
You have a motion to reduce the budget by the non-renewal replacement retirements, totaling 5 positions cut, taking $100,000 from circuit breaker and $250,000 from E&D in order to backfill this budget for FY25. Total amount difference would be $910,500 or 3.63%.
Second.
Discussion. Yes, Steve?
I don't mind going first, Beth, and thank you for everyone. Throughout the year, it doesn't make a difference what time it is, what day it is, anything. Yeah, maybe eclipses are once in a lifetime for some, but this is every day for us and all of you. You should help us. You help us whether you have questions, whether you know things outside the box. It doesn't make a difference. It's everyone. It's 10 people here. It's a lot more people as we all work together. I think some of the things, Beth, I can think of Paula Abdul, but I'm bringing myself into the 80s of 3 steps forward, 2 steps back. And I don't think it's so much that. And I also was thinking over the weekend, are we being penalized for being successful? And then I backed off of that idea too. I really think it's all about that we've gotten to a point, a better point for these kids every day. I made a vote last summer that really kind of shook a few people up, and I believed in it because it was for the safety of all of our students every day. And it doesn't make a difference. Spring break can come up, or April vacation as we call it up here in the Northeast. Different things can happen, but we're always there to back what we do. I physically backed what we do for almost 36 years, and I continue to want to keep on that same path. I don't believe that we'd ever lose. When I can hear the creativeness of not only Jeff, the superintendent, and I know Nikki and John and George provide the same thing, they know what we need, and they know how they can fill it, and they know how they can maneuver it and save it and let us get through. So those are my feelings. Thanks.
Okay. Chris, you were next.
Yeah, I'm just interested in hearing what some of those discussions were about the future and, how does this not put us right back in the same position next year? We had some pretty vibrant discussions about the state of affairs last meeting when we decided to set the assessment. And it seems like we've come back off that significantly. Yeah, I'm curious to know what, if any, plans are in the works for the future.
Sure, I guess we can.
Yeah, sure.
So, Lisa Green provided us with the information. She's already been speaking to her select board. The discussion, is for an override next year per the Madden report. As far as Whitman, Mary Beth has not stated that, but there's discussion ongoing with them. And yes, I know, that's the part. And I said, this is kind of a Band-Aid that's concerning also, but we wanted to, personally, I want to give a better chance for an override passing than with the million, over the $1 million, $1.6 million override. I don't think that has a chance, and I don't want to see us losing 20 positions, because everybody needs to understand that's what's going to happen. We'll lose 20 positions, and yes, that will impact the student growth. That will impact everything, class size. That will impact all the progress that we have made. So if we can do that first tier that does not impact the student growth, that is why I suggested this, and that was agreed upon by the heads of both departments there, so. Sure.
So, did you get any pushback on the budget itself?
No.
Any concerns that there's, superfluous spending or anything like that?
Absolutely
Right?
not.
So,
Absolutely, we did not.
Was there a consensus then that the predicament we're in primarily is because of lack of adequate funding from the state?
Yeah,
So if we look at the 5% assessment that the towns kind of lock us into, we're never going to get out of this with a 0.0001% increase from the state every year. We're just not. It's just not going to happen.
So, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so our budget goes up $3 million, say, this year. Folks, and this is the piece that Beth alluded to, it didn't go up 11%. If that went up 11%, that would be a $6 million increase of our budget. Our budget went up 3%, but because the towns now have to make up the differential in the lack of funding from the Commonwealth, and I did rough numbers, it looked like in FY23 or FY24, we received 41.9% of our budget from the state. Going forward in this budget, it would be 39.9%. So someone has to make up for that. And both, and I do believe it was a very good conversation, that the towns don't want to micromanage the budget for us and how we spend the money, but they just don't have that money to spend.
Understood. And that's kind of why I wanted to follow up.
Yep.
Is because, as I stated, the real problem's coming from the state.
Right.
And so even if we, take $250,000 out of E&D, which isn't really a good practice, and we use another $100,000 out of collected circuit breaker, we don't renew the positions that we're losing, and fill the retirements, right? That's
Correct.
the gist of it?
well, not all the retirements,
No.
some of them.
Fine.
Just some.
Yep, clear.
Okay, that we need to make that clear. It's
Sure,
the
please.
retirements that Jeff could do.
It's a combination of retirements and non-renewals.
That's
Yeah,
what I meant.
yeah, it's
I
not,
didn't mean to imply
it's not
that.
like every retirement.
Yeah. So that being said, and I hear the concern particularly from the elders of our community that are in fixed incomes. But if we go this route and then we can do an override next year, that's just going to increase the levy limit, right? And that's going to fall on the same people that are concerned, concerned today. So my thing is, we're not doing anything to move forward here. And until we get a real good firm grasp together as to what the problem actually is and start, leaning on our legislators to actually advocate to properly fund public education and regional schools in particular, we're going to be doing this again and again and again. I'm going to be sitting over there next time, not here, but we're going to keep doing this. So where is the advocacy? Where's the outreach? Where's the, this is what we need to happen to overcome this as a community. So if anybody wants to charter a bus, you can put me down for a ticket.
Hey, Fred?
And, what I fully believe is this is the best path forward to get us through this year. And, I'm 12 years on the committee, done many budgets, and all we do is keep kicking the can down the road.
Yep.
It's frustrating.
Yes.
But there was a lot of good headway made over the past couple of years, with the interventionists, with student development, with student scores, etc. For us to not be cognizant that the towns only have so many dollars, and the people only have so many dollars. To be able to have an override that, granted, is a Band-Aid, but it gets us through. Now, come next year, and I've been saying this for quite a few years now, we need to have a 5-year plan that will show how we're going to increase things and let the taxpayer decide. Now, we can trim the budget, we can go to the taxpayer, and they can still say no.
That's correct.
I think the likelihood of, passing a smaller amount, you've hit the nail on the head, Beth. It's far more likely that we get something like this through. And then we've got to roll up our sleeves and, really look at what we're doing, come October, November, and go from there. The towns only have so much revenue. So they've placed what they can afford, and the rest goes on to the override.
Right.
At this late stage, to try and have an override to make substantial headway, I think it's too late. And I don't know that the people have the appetite, because we're just saying, hey, we need this.
Yeah.
Whereas if we start working on a 5-year plan, this is what our needs are. This is going to get us through the next 5 years. And it's going to allow us to do A, B, C, and D. We're asking you to fund it.
Right.
And that's what we'll be asking the taxpayers at that point.
Right. Yep. And Hillary?
Just through you, Chair, to Fred, our budget subcommittee did have a 5-year plan when we instituted, I think, full day K. Chris Howard and David, and maybe you see if you were on that as well. And if you look at that document, at least on the Hanson side, for the FY25 projection, the projected assessment for Hanson was 15.3, and we voted them at 15.2. So we did that. So I don't know what more can happen. I haven't done this for 12 years. This is year 4. But it's the same thing over and over again. I think, and Chris, you were hitting it, I think there's a misconception out there that our budget is superfluous. I think the problem is the state funding, and that is being missed in the meetings that I've listened to. That is not the narrative that I'm hearing from the town side. It is our overspending, it is our overspending, it is our overspending. And that's just a misunderstanding of how our budget works. It's the same. We just did not receive money from the state that we should have. I guess my question, I would like to know what the actual numbers of the override are going to be for both towns. And my other question is, procedurally, the overrides have to be voted on at town meeting to appear on the ballot, right? Mm-hmm. So when that doesn't happen, we don't have a school budget? Like, I'm
That's correct.
okay. So how do we get out of the hamster wheel?
Okay, so, well, what happened,
Are we gonna be
so,
back here?
anyway, to be explaining what happens on the ballot, anyway, what everybody needs to know. At town meeting, the vote would be on the 5% that the towns recommend.
Sure.
Okay? There'll be an article for the override
Yeah.
of the remaining amount that we're looking for.
Okay.
Like I said, I do not have the exact number for Hanson, but for Mary Beth said, right now, looking at would be $559,866. That's, yeah. Lisa, do you have your number? Good. Okay.
Madam Chair, Lisa Green, Town Administrator for Hanson.
Can't hear you, Lisa, sorry.
So our override amount would be $372,141.
Do you have an impact of the average household or any number?
So
You have a calculator.
the average impact for a household with a house value of about $499,000 is about $79 annually. If you go up to 1.5 million, it's about $180. So it's a very small impact.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so next I have Dawn.
Thank you. I do want to first thank Jeff, your administration and central office for answering a multitude of questions that I asked, to the tune of 3 rounds of questions, that it was noted. And the reason why is because I have done as much extensive research on this budget as I can. And based on the questions I've asked, the most recent one was to ask about our revolving accounts and our food services account. And are there any funds there that are allowed or permissible to be moved over to cover expenses, to reduce the budget, to do anything we can, right? To look at every line we're spending. So I do want to at least thank those that did the work to answer the questions that I asked. This notion of asking the state and petitioning to the state, I did that this week, and I've done that in the past. I've tried to talk about the Chapter 70. I've talked about the inflation rate and the inflation factor to the foundation budget rates, which directly impact our hold harmless and getting more aid. I hope that my colleagues have done likewise the same. MASC has been pushing that out. Call them squeaky wheel. The final Chapter 70 aid has not been determined yet for FY25. The governor has not signed the budget. It won't happen until probably August, July.
Again.
So we still have time to advocate, but we have a job to do tonight as well. I have the plan. It's right here. The projection goes out right out to FY28. Colleague Hillary was spot on with Hanson's FY25 projection, $15,285,000. Whitman's was less, $18,906,000. In addition to advocating at the state, I think we have to look internally at our member towns and look at that levy. And I have spent, again, countless times watching more meetings than I care to admit, but there's information provided there. And I watched March 12th of Hanson Board of Selectmen with Mr. Madden, who I sat with back in 2019 in Whitman. And he told Whitman, you need a capital override. Whitman, you need an operating override. He's now telling Hanson, you need an operating override. It's an operating override because it's not a regional school district override. The law says we assess the member towns. South Shore Votex sent an assessment. The agricultural schools send an assessment. In that meeting, the chair of the Hanson Finance Committee mentioned that Hanson's had the lowest taxes, and sometimes they've even lowered them. Just need to refer to a few notes so I don't catch myself off guard, but Mr. Madden said this budget the chair of the Board of Selectmen, Hanson said there shouldn't be any surprises. A lot of these costs we can anticipate, and I would agree with that. It was said also that there are accounts that are funded that has been the sneaky way that we build free cash. And that's awfully concerning. I've actually kind of noticed that in the sense that year after year, only the school budget is told we can't afford it. We can't afford it. But then there's surplus revenue at the end of the year. So if you're funding lines and then you're not using that money, then you haven't properly funded your school budget. I think within our towns, there's a revenue collection problem. It's not a revenue, it's collection. You're not collecting all the revenue. I've gone over this with the town of Hanson. There has to be an honest conversation about the revenue that is available to be collected and how the towns historically have balanced their municipal budget on the backs of the school budget. It's constantly pushed back on the schools. And to recognize the concerns about the taxpayers, we're only doing them a further disservice by using E&D of $250,000. Because when you go to borrow for a middle school building, that tax rate's going to go up. The interest rate's going to go up because the district has used E&D, and it's now going to be at a low of $500,000. So if we want to do that and we want to take a risk, then that's an option. It's comforting to hear that the education's not going to be impacted, but I don't know what positions still are going to be impacted, so that makes it difficult.
Okay, well, Don,
What's your line, Fred?
That's not our purview. That's, the administration, we give them a budget, and they have to decide where that budget goes, right? And what positions.
Well, we approved the budget based on cost centers, yes, so staffing is one full cost center.
Right, but we can't,
I get that.
Right, but we can't, Jeff cannot still say what exact positions they are because of the notification to the people or the position,
Right.
and get people upset that position
I
is gone.
understand he can't. My opinion
So-
is that it's difficult to
Yeah,
vote
and-
something when I don't know what the impact is going to be.
We have to understand and know that Jeff and George have made that decision that this is okay, and it's not going to impact the education of the students. That's their job, to tell us that. And we have to trust that they're doing that correctly. So we have to trust that when they say, we can do this with this, it's okay. And as far as E&D, one of the things I forgot to say, and excuse me for, I know I'm out of line here, but I forgot to say that, everybody talks about the money that we took out of E&D last year. And what everybody forgets is that a lot of that money, the majority, 600-something thousand, was to pay for the breach, so that we didn't charge the two towns that money. We took it out of our E&D.
And then we took $500,000.
Correct.
Yeah.
So it
and
was
then-
1.1 million.
Right, and because our insurance was 1 million, but that's how much the breach cost, and people don't realize that. It wasn't because we were just funding positions. We were taking care of a bill instead of sending it to the two towns, so that I just wanted to correct that, so.
So the last comment, and it's really a clarification over the assessment we set tonight based on this vote that we're in discussion right now to take a vote. And I heard you, Chair, say that the towns are going to put on their warrant 5% increase to the school?
Yes.
But they can't touch this assessment amount that we vote.
Yes, they
Has to be
can.
the amount
No.
on the floor
No, it does not.
voted.
No. I was told
I
from
would
Mary
like an
Beth Carter.
attorney to clarify
Mary Beth
that.
Carter said we have done it in the past, and it was approved.
What was approved?
To do that, to do the split. I asked, right, at the meeting. I asked specifically, is that
Well,
legal?
then where
Can
in
we
the
do
law
it?
does it say that they have the authority? Because the law says from regional schools to assess the member town, and that's what this committee is charged with.
Are we talking
To
about
set
two
an
different things, maybe?
assessment.
Well,
Madam Chair, the assessment's not
So Fred's
changing.
not out of
Fred,
order.
you're not-
He's got Steve.
okay. Steve,
Funding it.
Steve?
Me?
Yeah, did you want to speak?
Well, I mean, I can throw in a few words. One of the things is, and I hear what Ms. Byers is saying, but, if you go back to the middle school and we voted, say, the additional 19 million or 14 million that would be on top of it because we wanted to fund it level service and not what we actually did because we've had experience with that, and I was questioned on that, then we would be 19 million more in the hole for that. Whitman could be in a lot more, even though it's other monies, it's still something that shows up on Dennis's tax bill.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to see that additional. He wants it the least impactful that it can be. So 250,000 versus 19 or 14 million, I mean, that's got me a little bit of a rock. I'd rather pay the $250,000 and risk the assessments. I've always looked at Standards & Poor and Moody's throughout my time on the Finance Committee. I never took my eye off of it. And I don't necessarily agree with these type of points because there is still, or budgeting. This is only our one time to be getting our budget. We're over budgeting, okay, it becomes E&D next year. It's not a penalty. That's a little bit of a balance. Make sure, hey, maybe we got through the school year right. We used to do freezes. I remember that under Dr. McEwen. I brought in my own crayons. I didn't want to risk anything. But we used to do freezes, and that was, like a whole other thing that really helped the district. I don't know at the time the whole details. I don't recall it, but that's it.
Okay, Chris?
Yeah, I was just going to say, it seems to me the fact of the matter is that the percentage by which the school budget is increasing isn't sustainable for the communities. That's what it seems like every year, year after year after year. We hear. And we have some members that say things like, well, if we can come up with a 5-year plan, then that'll help us and, solve everything. And the fact of the matter is, that's not going to, because we have unfunded mandates that are driving up our budget. So that's not a solution. And that's just where we are. And that's the hard pill that our communities need to swallow. And if you look at our property tax rates compared to other towns in the area, you might be a little surprised what you see. Because it used to be Whitman was high, and we've heard it for years. That's not the case anymore. So we got to really start having some real conversations instead of just the Band-Aid talk and what we've done year after year after year. And that's where I'll leave it. Thank you.
Okay, Fred?
If we look at what we need to do, and the problem is the state. Okay, we have, they set aside 5% of our assessment to increase our budget. I believe every other town department gets 2.5%, unless there's an extraordinary circumstance. They realize that we are behind the 8 ball. That being said, they only have so much money to work with. So when we hit town hall floor, it's raise and appropriate for X amount of dollars. And the only way to get the other dollars is to do an override. And I'd rather see us do it on a plan than to do it year after year on a quote-unquote extra line item, so to speak.
Okay. All right.
Can I chime in just?
Yes, please.
So somebody asked me in town what is sustainable for the regional school district, and I said a 3 to 4% every year. And that doesn't seem outrageous when you say a budget should go up 3 to 4%. If we were guaranteed every year 3 to 4%, we would live here. We would live within that. However, that's looking at a 7 to 8% assessment increase from the town based upon state revenues. And that's the 5-year plan that we showed out till 28, that when we spoke about it, that would be unsustainable without overrides filling that. But when you sit down to brass tacks and you look, a family budget goes up. I think Mr. Whitman-Hanson said salaries are low, but budgets are up. That leads right into our concerns with our negotiating next year. If we look at scenario 4, it's a 2.95% increase, and it's still a 5.58% increase of an assessment. So I'm under 3%, and that's still an overassessment of what the towns have already alluded to. So if we can get somewhere and say this regional school district will need 3 to 4% every year, that will be sustainable. And I don't know if we're ever going to get there, because we rely, if the state keeps giving us $100,000 a year, you go from 41%, it used to be 50, like 2010, we were 50%, now we're 39.9. So that's trickling down, and there was a tweet out today from somebody in MASC that it looks like the governor's budget's not moving progressively in the favor that we would like it to move, but that I'm not sure of yet.
We still have the House and the Senate.
Yep. Just not
Don?
good.
I just want to get back to the assessment being notified to both member towns. So we were copied on an email on March 21st. So that's when the district treasurer, David Leary, sends it to both towns. And it is pursuant to General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B, as illustrated in the table below. Here are the assessments. So for me to hear that the town is going to put their own number on town meeting floor is not in line with the law.
Okay, but that's the funding of the assessment is the difference. They're putting it on the funding, so they're able to fund that much, but they can't, so they can split, in my mind, that's how.
But the
they put it.
voters have to vote on this amount that we assess, no different than
They
South
will be.
Shore tax.
They will be voting on it, just in two separate places, and that's why it's legal.
That's happened before.
No, they have to vote on our assessment.
They will be voting on our
total
That's
assessment.
the funding.
It's the funding.
Could we ask Mr. Kane to, maybe if he has some insight on this? I don't know if he does. or
Mr.
not.
Kane, is he the attorney?
No, if he's been in some meetings with Mary Beth, I don't know, selectmen here.
On that specific, no, I was going to address another point, actually.
Okay,
Okay.
thanks.
Finance committee could probably give you some insight. Same
On-
in the Article 2.
Okay,
So the finance committee can give a recommendation.
go on to the,
Okay. Rosemary Conley, Whitman Finance. What can happen is the finance committee can give a recommendation, but the bill remains the bill. It is a bill, we can't do it with anybody else, but we can do a recommendation and that can come back to you if the town doesn't want it. But you guys are equal in power as far as this bill goes to the selectmen, so they really can't outride you. You have a big responsibility. You have to handle students, the laws that go to the students, there's all kinds of recommendations, and that's why you're a separate entity, and that's why we have to trust in your decisions. There's no way we could handle all the other departments and this, it's so intricate. So it's really, we trusting in that you've done that job when it comes to us, and that if you are gonna add extra stuff, you do an override. But that's
Yeah, thank
usually
you.
how it happens.
yes, Hillary?
I think that was kind of what my question was, like the procedural question. I understand what you're saying about the funding source piece, but to Dawn's point, the number remains the same. And so we still, I guess my mind is going back to 2021 with the 112th and the super town meeting and all this stuff, like, because I want to know what the worst case scenario is going to be, and I know that that is that. But if I'm hearing Hanson Select Board member meetings correctly, we're looking at a close to $400,000 override, and then next year potentially a $5 million override, right? I have a lot of concerns about the buy-in on override after override after override. I don't think I have concerns about that. Significant. So my question is, like, if it is not voted in at town meeting on either side, we're right back here, and then what? Like, was that part of the conversation that you all had with them? Like, is this it, right? I mean, the meetings I've been hearing in Hanson are that they're going to be draining their free cash just to cover the 5%. So
They wouldn't be as much. I think Lisa could probably tell that they would be draining less
okay,
by doing this.
right. So
And
as a Hanson taxpayer who wishes my grocery bill was $92 a week, I'm sitting here saying, I'm going to sit at town meeting and I'm going to hear that to balance the budget, we have to take X amount of dollars out of free cash, and it's still not going to cover all the bills, and we have to do an override, and then next year there might be not, like, what is our end game? Like, what, as school committee members, to make sure that we are not decimating the school, right? Because all of us, not all of us, but we were in those talks of the 1/12 budget, right? We don't want to be there. And I am it looks very dark to me that that's potentially a reality. Because of the way this is, I don't know how you said those conversations were good, and I think that this is the best bet. I really do. Out of all of this, I think that this proposal is a best case scenario for what we're dealing with. But, I don't know how, my strong concern is how is this going to work when it doesn't pass at town meeting? Because that's a real possibility.
Well, it's the same as it always does, that it comes back here to us.
So same thing. So then we're back.
Yep.
And is it fair to say then that the town would not have a balanced budget either? Does it mess up the whole town budget? That's my other question.
No, because, okay, so first of all, I'm assuming they're going to vote for the part that's on...
just to put it on the ballot.
On the ballot. No, they're going to vote for the amount in the town meeting that's in there. What the question of, will they vote for the override part, that becomes the issue. Right. So that's when, if that doesn't go by in town meeting, they'll still vote our budget, but it'll be less than that extra money that we need.
So then our budget is not passed, then we come back. Because if we certify an assessment number...
That's correct.
14.9...
That's correct, but it doesn't affect the town at all, because they're balanced. They have to put a balanced budget onto the town meeting floor, okay?
Yep.
So it doesn't affect them, it affects us.
Funding source.
That
makes
yeah,
sense.
How does it affect us?
It affects us if they don't vote for the override.
Right.
It affects us,
But
because
we
then it comes back
haven't
to
voted an override here.
Not yet,
That's
no.
the only override that could affect us, like in the SOS.
We can't vote an override, we can vote to lower the assessment, that's all we can do. They have told us that that's what they're going to do, to help us fund our budget. They're going to propose, put on the
I
override.
just have one other question. Do you have, this is perhaps a loaded question, but are they willing to support the override?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
At least both chairs.
And they were going to talk to their,
So
and they
they can't
felt
speak
that,
for themselves.
in talking to their boards, that they felt that it would be more comfortable. Now, Sean can maybe deny that, but that it was a, forward movement in the help.
I'm sure they'll discuss that tomorrow.
That's why we're doing this tonight. Okay? That's why we have to do this tonight. Sean, I will recognize you.
I fully support the override, absolutely. One point about the end game, because if we were just to talk about the budget and the way that we've been talking about it, it seems like it's just going to keep happening over and over, and what the heck are we going to do? I think the way that it ends is we come out of hold harmless. And it seems like from the research I'm doing, I know you're doing a lot of research, I've been trying to do a lot of research, our local contribution years ago in 2007 was extremely low. We were well below what the state wanted us to contribute. Today, we're very close to what the state wants us to contribute. The difference between 30% and now close to 59% is a long slog to get there. But over the last 11 years or so, we've made significant gains in increasing our local contribution by them keeping us in this hold harmless situation. It looks like the enrollment, based on your projection, might increase next year. So that's a positive sign. If there was the change in the inflation rate on the foundation budget, that's a positive sign. If we could come out of hold harmless in that way, then the conversation changes.
Yes, it does.
That's how things change. That's the end game. Once we come out of hold harmless, this budget discussion and the dynamic that we've seen over the last 10 years or so changes. So that is the end game. And I think, how can you truly know? But I think we're close to that point. To say that the state, I think if I'm being direct to you, Mr. Scriven, through the chair, to say that the state isn't giving us enough state aid is a misconception. Through their eyes, they're giving us too much state aid, and they've given us too much state aid over the last period of time. You know what I mean? Once we come out of the hold harmless situation, then we get back into the typical scenario, and they start to fund us with state aid that's proportional to our budget. And then a 3 to 4% increase at your budget level will be like the same as the assessment. So I think that's to speak to the end game and what it would look like.
Yeah, circuit breaker, Sean, is a pretty complicated matrix, no, isn't it?
Circuit breaker.
Yeah. And it's, I understand there's a calculus that determines, that the state determines through circuit breaker, how much funding we get. I get that. But the fact remains that we have several unfunded mandates or underfunded mandates, both as a, municipality and as a regional school district, right? There are state laws that everybody has to abide by, and there are conditions that regional schools have to, abide by or whatever. But so that's my point, really, that it's underfunded in that sense. I understand population and it factors into circuit breaker, and I get that. But as a general observation, they're not funding public education and regional school districts like they should.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And, I think...
Glenn's on.
Oh, Glenn?
Yes, hi. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, all right. I don't have much to say, but we're not unique. This is happening all over the state, and every town's going to be voting on an override pretty much from what you see in the paper. And I think this is a fair compromise, that just proposal. I think the motion before us is something that gets us through. I know we want to fix next year and we want to fix 5 years, but we have to fix this year first. We can't fix the next ones if we don't fix this one. So if an override is going to happen no matter what, I think, making it as painless as possible is what we should be doing now. So when it does come time to vote, I think we should accept Jeff's proposal. That's all. Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, Glenn.
Did you guys hear it?
Yep, we got you.
We got you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Move the question.
Okay, all in favor of moving the question?
You got to roll call it.
Roll call?
Oh, yeah.
I have to roll call? Hillary?
Yes.
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Yes.
And Glenn, we're going to move the question?
Yes,
Okay?
yes.
Okay, then we go to the vote. So, the proposal, again, is on the floor. The motion was made by Fred, seconded by Steve Boyce.
Clarification, can you read what the
The
assessment,
amount?
So I
the
was-
number again,
Yep.
please?
I was going to say, so we're looking at scenario 2 on your sheets.
This was the revised one, right? Everybody should know.
So line 2A, FY25 general fund with E&D circuit breaker use and 5 retirement non-renewals, $62,930,345. 2B, FY24 general fund voted, I'm just repeating last year's budget, $60
I'm
million.
sorry, could you hold, is this in the drive?
No, it's right here. It's in the paperwork in a stapled packet.
And it wasn't in the truck, too.
No, I don't have it in my, I have your summary. No, it's not in my packet.
Okay, here you go. Is that over?
Do you have it in your packet?
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Stephen, do you have it in
You
your
don't have it
packet?
either?
I've got a copy.
I got plenty of other papers. I'm overloaded, but.
But it is in the drive.
Yeah, it is in the drive.
So you were reading
The one we got.
Okay, I'll follow that.
Well, we changed it. There was
She just sent it out.
6 originally, now there's
With
4.
the unpaid bills,
Yes, it's with the unpaid bills.
it's toward the back.
It was sent April 4th.
It's with the unpaid bills.
JK.
Technically, it is, right?
Okay? Got it? Okay. So it's scenario 2, all right? So using $250,000 of E&D, $100,000 of, oh, excuse me, a circuit breaker, 5 retirees non-renewals, in the FY25 budget, okay? And so it is the general fund budget as voted. With that was 62,930, 3845. The general fund budget as voted, 60,485, 158. The increase would be 2,445,187 for a 4.04 increase. Whitman operating budget with that would be 19,135.
Million.
Yeah, oh, sorry. 19,135,687. The increase would be 1,396,237 for an assessment increase of 7.87. Hanson would be, with the E&D, would be now 14,974,735. The operating increase would be 1,067,502 for their increase of 7.68%.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, calling for the vote, please. Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
And Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes, unanimous. Now we'll do the assessment
So,
numbers.
can I read this out?
Did you fill it in? Because I'm having Jeff fill it in.
Oh, well, I only got the excess and deficiency. I figured that was easy.
Here, Steve, you can do it with John, just fill it out.
Okay. One, FY25 use of excess and deficiency. I move to appropriate the sum of $250,000 from the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Excess and Deficiency Fund balance for the purpose of reducing the FY25 operating assessment for both the towns of Whitman and Hanson.
Second.
Okay, vote.
Yes.
Fred?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Yes.
Chris? Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve? Glenn?
Oh, great, thank you.
Yes.
And me, yes. Yeah, he said yes. Okay,
Motion number 2, FY25 general fund budget vote. I move to certify the Whitman-Hanson Regional School District fiscal year 25 budget in accordance with the PK through 12 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Agreement, Section 4E2, and Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B at $62,680,345, plus $250,000 from the Whitman-Hanson Regional District Excess and Deficiency Fund balance for a total of $62,930,345.
Can you read the assessments to each town
I don't have
based on those numbers?
Oh,
they're
shoot,
on
I'm
the
so
back.
sorry.
They're on the back.
But that's 3 and 4. Do you want me to include them in this?
Yeah, we voted for something.
So vote them separately. So vote on that one.
Yep.
Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
And Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Okay, next one, number 3.
3, FY25 Hanson operating assessment. I move to set the fiscal year 2025 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating assessment for the town of Hanson in accordance with the PK through 12 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Agreement, Section 4E2, in the Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B at $14,974,735.
Second.
Okay, Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Okay, last one.
Last one. FY25 Whitman operating assessment. I move to set the fiscal year 2025 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District operating assessment for the town of Whitman in accordance with the PK through 12 Whitman-Hanson Regional School District Agreement, Section 4, E2 in the Mass General Law, Chapter 71, Section 16B at $19,135,687.
Second.
Okay, Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes.
Joe, did you do that?
Okay,
Yes.
Here's what we're going to do.
all right,
Okay, we have a new assessment, new budget.
okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Did we have to recall the previous assessments? We can just,
No, you can just vote that.
Yeah.
You changed it.
years ago, we...
Yeah,
Yeah, it supersedes now.
Yeah.
Yeah, you just lowered it.
Okay.
John, unpaid bills, please?
Thank you. So with the unpaid bills, you've seen these before in previous meetings. In your packet, it's the law that governs unpaid bills is Chapter 44, Section 64. And it's anything that isn't, that is a budgeted line item expense that comes from a previous fiscal year. This is how you vote to pay that. FY24 budgets are meant for FY24 expenses. If FY23 expenses come in that were unknown, this is the way that you pay them. So they're called unpaid bills. So the second page is the 4 that are pending for your vote. PAR Incorporated, and 3 from Accept Education Collaborative, for a total of $7,955.16. And I've given the funding source and the funding account number there for consideration.
Motion to pay those bills as presented.
Second.
okay, Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
And Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Dawn?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes.
In your packet, you have my evaluation tool. I'd like to move it up to May this year. It always seems interesting or odd when 2 or 3 members might not be here and we're reading their evaluation, so I'd like to see the folks that evaluate me. In the next month, I will be loading in the drive evidence of goals, a summative of my year this year that you can go off of. And I also encourage anybody to come and meet with me to talk about my evaluation and pros and cons before we do it in person. I think if Beth could have these documents by May 3rd, which would set us up for the May 8th school committee meeting.
Did you say May 3rd?
May 3rd. Friday, May 3rd would be great so that she can put them all together and then we could do the evaluation on May 3rd.
Can you have Jen send us like a calendar reminder of that?
Sure, absolutely. It'll be out there. Any questions?
And if you're not sure on how to fill this out or what to do, you can always call, talk to Jeff, and he'll
Love to talk you through it.
talk you through it. So, because it is cumbersome, we wish that it could be different, because even though I had to fill these out, and I'm sure Hillary has to, as a teacher,
You can choose whatever way you want, right?
yeah, they are not fun to do, so.
So I'm just going to take 2 seconds to just as on April 29th at 7 p.m.
Oh, yeah.
NEASC will be on campus, but they're asking for a Zoom school committee meeting for about an hour with members to speak to you folks and the evaluation committee of the high school. They'll be here Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday, and even Wednesday for the decennial review of the high school, but they're asking for an hour with the school committee on Monday, the 29th at 7 p.m., and it will be an online conversation. So that's that. If you want to go to old business with school calendar, I'm good.
Yep. Okay. Any questions on that part? Okay, we're going to move to the school calendar. Jeff?
Yep, so taking into consideration options for next year, my recommendation after looking at what we had, an 85 to 86% student attendance on Good Friday in Hanson. It was very good at both schools. A little less than we're usually in the 90s, but 86 wasn't bad for for a holiday or a religious holiday. We're asking the committee to approve the calendar as is, with Good Friday next year being that additional half-day for students. We already set the start of school. It was going to be the end date that would be affected if we didn't choose to go to school on Good Friday next year. So I'm looking at presenting the calendar as is, with Good Friday as a half-day of school for those who can attend.
Motion to accept?
Second.
Okay,
And just-
discussion.
Yeah, sorry, just to cover. So September 3rd being Tuesday, that is going to be no school day?
That will be a no
To
school
allow
day.
for the voting?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Any other questions? Okay. Fred?
Yes.
Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
And Chris?
Yes.
And Don?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Okay.
Motion to adjourn.
Well, do I have any public?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Hold up.
I just read what was here.
And it says
Oh, yeah.
public comment.
George, what did they get, $400 in it?
I'll comment.
We'd love to hear it, George.
Okay, we have one, Rosemary.
7 p.m. 7 p.m. I'm like, April 20th?
I wanted to reiterate, Mr. Scriven brought up, what can we do for the state side? You can call in and talk about the cap on the interest rate, the inflation rate for the new Student Opportunity Act, because that really is the component that's really hurting us. I sent George that information on what you can call into. I can email you it. We can all drive in. I've already text messaged Brady. There are other people. I am bugging people on this one. The squeaky wheel does get the grease, so just take a second out of your time, post it on your Facebook pages, and start talking about, please correct this inflation rate. It was capped, so it arbitrarily didn't meet its amount last year, and then it fell. So just a smoothing in sorts of those mandated costs would really help us. It really would. So I will send that out, and if you want to start a field trip, we can do that and head on in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Rosemary.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay. And our next meeting will be May 8th. Okay, so Fred?
Yes.
And Hillary?
Yes.
Michelle?
Yes.
Chris?
I have a question before we adjourn. What was 429?
The NEASC Zoom.
Yes, Zoom.
School committee meeting?
Zoom meeting.
It'll be we'll have to call it to order.
That's what I'm saying.
But
The next
Yeah.
meeting's the 29th.
At 7
Next
o'clock.
in-person.
The
yes.
in-person
Yeah.
meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Just
Yep.
clarify.
And Don?
Thank you for
Oh,
the
yes.
clarification.
Yes.
Don?
Yes.
Steve? Steve?
Yes.
And Glenn?
Yes.
And me, yes. Thank you very much, everybody.
Folks.
Thank you.